And the next person I'm going to introduce is myself. First of all, I come to you from the unceded land of the Anishinaabe people near Ottawa, Canada, in which right now we have daffodils, as you can see behind me. They have just come in bloom yesterday. I'm a facilitator and a mediator specializing in multi-party, multi-sector consensus building process involving environmental stakeholders, sustainable development, justice, health. I have a law degree. I'm an active member of the climate change team for Mediators Beyond Borders International. Many of the members of our group are represented here today as facilitators. Also serve as an advisor on climate governance to the World Federalist Movement Canada. So I am now going to start my screen sharing for our presentation. And I think I shall make it I think I can make this my full screen if I slideshow. Start. There we are. Good. Okay, I am now screen sharing. Excellent. And I am starting the presentation, so I will move to that. Now, so Katharine and I are very excited to now share a toolkit that we have developed. This is still evolving, and more detail on all the points we're going to be discussing here are available on the conference website or our project website below our names there. And there are policy briefs on many of the points that we're going to be discussing, and as I say, they are evolving. So if you are stimulated by anything you see there, please be in touch with us. We would love to be in touch with you. So the toolkit, oops, let me just, there we are. The toolkit has 10 components, and the first 5 are tools for presiding officers. And there are 5 of these, and they are the interpretation of consensus, more on that in a moment, reminders of urgency and goal of the negotiations, small group processes, the use of straw votes, and sharing best practices. I could talk at length, any facilitator could talk at length about many of the importance of these tools. I'm just going to focus on consensus because the time constraints. I encourage you to go to our website to read more. As Rita mentioned earlier, consensus is often interpreted as meaning unanimous support, that everyone supports this idea. And in observing climate change negotiations, regularly would see a presiding officer suggest something, one party object, and boom, that idea is dead. And that is not in accord with the way I facilitate consensus decision-making processes in the civil sector. So this made me very curious, and I thought maybe we could take a look at some consensus fundamentals, like what is consensus? What is consensus? It's coming to the best decision to which all can agree or can live with, not necessarily the preferred option for all. What it means is any objections have been heard, have been understood, and have been considered in coming to the decision. It does not mean that there is unanimity. And some UNFCCC presidents have stressed that interpretation. Perhaps most famously is Patricia Espinosa, COP16 president, who in commenting said that consensus does not mean that one country has the right of veto and can prevent 193 others from moving forward. Now, she said that in a speech given after that COP in response to a situation that arose in the very closing session, in which she gavelled as approved the Cancun agreements, despite the fact that Bolivia was waving their hand trying to get their attention because they wanted to speak against it. And Tricia Espinosa has amazing leadership in achieving those Cancun agreements. She created innovative ways of creating links between developed and developing countries. She had contributed so much to bringing people together before that. Much can be learned. But in this one little aspect, I just think as a facilitator, it just rubs me the wrong way that the process requires you to ignore somebody in order to get something done. And so what we recommend is that there be better use of something that's part of consensus called standing aside. Standing aside means someone says, we don't see the need for this, or we think it may be a mistake, we don't like it, but we can live with it. And because our objection is not strong enough to stop a vast majority of nations who are ready to move forward. And when parties choose to stand aside, consensus exists. Now, currently, they do stand aside just by being quiet. It's not a formalized thing. And I think we think if it was formalized, there would be more chance that people would take that option. It raises then the standard of a formal objection that would mean that consensus does not exist. And that formal objection would then be, we cannot support this or allow the rest of the parties to make this decision. It's a very high standard. It's not just even a party's strong preference. It has to be something like, go forward in this way violates the goal or ultimate values of the UNFCCC. It would have to be something higher than this is just our government's position on this, beyond the red line that was discussed earlier. So, of course, an obstructionist-oriented country could just say that their objection meets this high standard. But we believe that a robust use of standing aside might provide some face-saving and a trust-building mechanism to strengthen this aspect of UNFCCC process. And with that comment, I am now going to pass the microphone over to my colleague, Katharine.
Thank you very much, Christine. So I'm going to present the second part of the toolkit, and the point 6 and 7 almost also relate to the first part, which is about content experts who ideally would identify and develop options to really help when negotiators are often stuck with the extremely technical details that are being negotiated, and to really help directly within the session, ideally by being present there and being kind of on call to provide additional expertise, or to at least provide that overnight. The 7th point is that there would be facilitation experts who would be able to support parties to explore issues and develop consensus. Often within the negotiations, it's happening ad hoc, often a party representative volunteering to act as a facilitator. But what we have also seen based on our research is that, and observations over the last 10, 12 years, is that often it would really help the situation and achieving an outcome if there would be a neutral person at hand to facilitate a small group of the perhaps 10 or so party representatives standing around a table at that moment. I'm going to focus on the last 3 points on mutual learning among negotiators and non-national actors, institutional memory of negotiation and facilitation techniques, and non-negotiation settings to explore common ground in my presentation. Also, especially because this is really based on much of my research over the last 10 years within the UNFCCC negotiations, and also going beyond that. Next slide, please. So mutual learning is something which is often talked about, like the importance of learning. We've already heard it quite a few times at today's conference as well. So what exactly is learning? So see three different types of learning. One is knowing more facts, getting additional knowledge. The other one is experiential learning, learning and reflecting on our own and others' experiences. And the third aspect of learning would be really changing the way we see things, our underlying beliefs, or what we think of what kind of policies or what kind of negotiation approaches should be used moving forward. And learning happens on the individual level, so ourselves as non-national actors, as negotiators, and also within our delegations, within our government ministries, within organizational aspects, where we then not speak in our personal capacity, but on behalf of something or someone. And what really needs to move forward is, and where we see the role of the UNFCCC moving into the 2020s, sharing of experiences within with national level NDCs, how they're being implemented, to really avoid that countries reinvent the wheel. If another country has already good or bad experiences with a certain policy approach, that's very important for the others to know, and then to reflect on, to learn, to adopt some elements, but not necessarily those that wouldn't work for them. Another important point is mentoring schemes for junior negotiators. There's a very big change in people coming in, coming out of the negotiations. Some have a wealth of experience over 5, 10, even more years, and some are really just starting out. And there are some knowledge exchange aspects already there, but mentoring schemes would be something where an experienced negotiator really works with a junior negotiator for a year or a certain time. That would certainly help. And then a third element is the institutional memory, which is also linked to people with a wealth of experience leaving, and the extremely high complexity the negotiations have achieved so far. So anyone starting out wondering what is going on here would really benefit from some kind of database, almost like a wiki style platform, which details not just important terms, but especially negotiation techniques, institutional memories, what are the indabas, what has been done in the Talanoa dialogues, all those terms which don't mean much to people when they hear them for the first time. And this also links to training manuals and workshops for chairs and negotiators. In the non-negotiation spaces, they're often called the green zone, or the whatever the organizers decide to call them. They're often filled with energy and enthusiasm, because non-state actors and parties really share what they've been doing on the ground, their achievements, big initiatives are being announced, big commitments are being announced in those places. And there's a lot of discussions and presentations of solutions. Whereas on the other hand, when you then walk over to the negotiation venues, there's often not that much energy around. And it's really about thinking of bridging those and actually getting this positive energy from the green zone, the non-negotiation spaces, also into the formal negotiations. And it's also about having a space to explore innovative climate action and cooperation, which really helps parties to move beyond the negotiation script, so that they can actually share what they would be willing and able to agree on, to really think creatively outside the box, and to then be able to take that back to their governments as well. And the third part is the action on climate empowerment dialogues, which have been growing and becoming more complex, and also with many more participants over the last years. And the important thing after observing those would be to define the objectives and desired outcomes more clearly, to attract participants that can help achieve the outcomes and the objectives, and to also design the dialogues in a way that are tailored to achieving the objectives and the outcomes. So to move a little bit away from the currently kind of random attendance of people, to actually in a targeted way invite those who would really be able to move the discussions forward. Then making better use of non-national actors. The final point is there is a lot going on, and we've heard it over and over, this positive energy, how non-national actors can really contribute to achieving the NDGs and NDCs, and how important it is that they are part of the conversation. So I think what we would want to do is sound a slightly cautionary note that there's also a bit of a danger of climate washing through focusing on slightly more public relations announcements, casual exchanges, and just focusing on databases, on just showing, oh, there's a lot of happening there. But it's really about building inclusive learning and capacity building partnerships, which really help us to move beyond lip service to actual action on the ground, and to really focus on lesson drawing, on exchanging experiences and mutual learning regardless of the countries of origin. So especially the Global South has a lot to offer and has found a lot of innovative solutions that the Global North can learn from. And so it's really about South-North and also South-South cooperations. So to conclude, our key points were to reinterpret consensus, to facilitate learning among negotiators and among chairs, to use non-negotiation spaces to advance climate action, and to have an inclusive capacity building and learning partnership focus, which includes both parties and non-state or non-national actors. So thank you very much for your attention.